Welcome to Indiana Sports Beat Radio, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Looks over the middle, second guesses, fires, throws. Does he make the catch in the end zone? Yes! Touchdown! Oladipo to win it.
Another one!
He got
Another one!
Oladipo!
Another one! Huge hole! He's at the 30! He's gonna go! 10, 5, touchdown! Jonathan Taylor!
Galloway finds Rob Finnessy, who fires the three, and
He hit it!
Now, from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios, here's your host, Jim Coyle.
Hello, everybody. Welcome aboard to another edition of Indiana Sports Beat Radio, coming to you from high atop the 18th fairway of the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios here on this Friday, April 28th. Kind of a rainy one out there today. It's a little miserable, not going to lie to you. Don't forget Indiana Sports Beat Radio, powered by Andy Moore Honda. Get more to your door with AndyMooreHonda.com for the best in new and used vehicles. And Endeavor Hospitality and their family of restaurants in and around the Bloomington area. Great places like BB's Market, where we normally are on Fridays, not there today on this rainy day. Your butcher baker, no matter where you live, with a complete array of custom meats, full-size custom bakery, and coming soon, the Butcher's Cut, an exquisite steakhouse that will be located right next door. And yesterday, you can, those of you that are on YouTube, you can see I'm wearing the Who's Your Hank shirt from Hank's Pizza Mac. Stopped by there yesterday. Oh my goodness. Had a bowl or two that were in both incredible. How's your day going? Weekend setup. The weather is just a little iffy. Not terrible, but nothing great. Looking forward to on the program today. Alec Busse will be along to join us. Of course, we'll get caught up on all that's going on with recruiting and then set up the weekend's action with the EYBL circuit, Nike, and the Adidas 3SSB circuit stops. One's in Phoenix. I think that's Nike. I believe Adidas is in Bryan, Texas. You definitely need a scorecard to keep up with that. Let's see. Was there anything on TV last night, John? Anything?
That's a good question.
The NFL draft. Yes, we're going to talk about that. Of course, the Colts get, who did I tell you? Anthony Richardson.
That's right, Mr. Anthony Richardson.
Well, it's not like was no.
It's not like it was a big shock. It's not like it was a big shock what you're saying.
Yeah, I wasn't pigskin Damas.
It's not like you were all those idiots who were saying Will Levis was going to go number one.
Well, there was a lot of that, and I saw a lot of people thinking Levis over Richardson for the Colts, and I'm like, what are you thinking? And I did not think Stroud was going to drop, and he did not. He goes to Houston, who Indianapolis doesn't get C.J. Stroud, but they're sure going to see a lot of him as an interdivisional foe. And, of course, Bryce Young, number one to the Panthers. And more importantly, John, do you know who the coach of the Panthers is?
Not off the top. Is he a new coach?
To the Panthers, yes.
Who is it? Who we got?
Do you know who the former the former coach of the Indianapolis Colts is?
Oh, Mr. Oh my gosh,
Frank Reich.
Yeah, Frank Reich. I was trying to say.
Frank Reich is the head coach of the Carolina Panthers and was fired by Indianapolis, hired by Carolina. Carolina finagles the number one pick, and Frank Reich now goes into training camp with the number one quarterback. Not a bad switch. I know he would have rather have done this in Indianapolis, and had he been allowed to do that, would things have been better for Frank Reich? Should he have been allowed to get through that season last year to get to this point? We'll see if the Colts regret that. I don't know if I think that they might, but you got to move on and upwards and onwards, because that's where they are. You can't look back. Shane Steichen's got his guy now. He's the coach of the Colts. And I think it's going to be exciting. It should be fun. Looking forward to talking to Matt Taylor about that next week. Lots going on with college basketball as well. Like I said, portal action continues. Signings are still going on. There's still people out there.
And we were talking about this on a different show that I do in the afternoons yesterday. Apparently, Indiana is now in the running for Mackenzie Embaco, a freshman in the 2023 class, or excuse me, he'll be a freshman next year, who recently decommitted from Duke, reopened his recruitment, and now he's listed visits for St. John's, Kansas, Indiana, and Louisville.
There's still guys out there. And here's the thing. Indiana, don't let the information out. The information only gets out if it's given out. You can take the rest from there. It's hard to the portal recruiting. That's hard for anyone to know. So unless that information is just handed out, we're not going to really know about it. Just read, but you can read between the lines. Philip, I'm hoping to get K-Bro on to discuss that very thing, man. You're right. He does cover Florida, and that's why I was hoping to get him to come on. We're working on that. Sam, how are you, sir? Sam Joaquim down in Sam Joaquim down in Claremont, Florida. Home of Claremont Lakes Dental Care. So if you're down around there, a free plug for you. He's got a son at Montverde Academy. And he's talking about and Montverde Academy signed with IU basketball this week that he's never heard of, and he goes to all their games. James Goodis. Well, that would be news to me as well. It doesn't mean it hasn't happened, but there's been no official release of that unless it happened overnight. We'll have to check into that. Sam, thank you for that little tidbit. And if you're down around Winter Garden area, that's Claremont, right? Winter Garden, right around Florida. Stop in Claremont Lakes Dental Care. We have to make them a sponsor. Let's see. Andrew, thanks. Were you talking about Embaco? Is that where you were just talking about?
Yes, that's who I mentioned.
Yeah. Andrew says he looks like a player. Absolutely. There's no reason to panic right now. There is, like I said, if they just wouldn't make they need to make less things public, and they could probably navigate these waters a little easier. Although the natives would still be restless because they want to know, and they want to know now. I mentioned the Nike EYBL event. That's this weekend. Now it starts today. They're out in Phoenix. Adidas 3SSB is in Bryan, Texas. That's where Indiana Elite is playing. Guys like Flory Badunga, Raleigh Burgess, Jalen Harrelson, Trent Sisley, Cooper Cop, or Cooper Cock. Let's see, who else is on that? Travis Perry, I think, is on that team. It'd be interesting. I'm looking forward to seeing how they do. They're a loaded team, man. They got a kid from Illinois, and they've got a couple of kids from Kentucky, some of their better players. And then a lot of the national guys Indiana is chasing will be out in Phoenix. Randy says embaco is that how you say that? Have you heard his name?
So I've heard two different pronunciations. I've heard people say embaco, and I've heard people say migbaco. I guess the only time will tell until we learn how to say it the true.
Yeah, I'm going with embaco until I hear otherwise.
Because migbaco just sounds kind of weird to say, but it's kind of like when we were saying Malik Renault last year until we figure out it was Malik Reneau.
Well, I didn't say Renault very long, I don't think.
Once, I can't remember, somebody corrected us and we all switched over to Renew. It was probably Don Fisher.
There's something I was getting ready to pull up. Daggone it.
Yeah, while you're thinking that, go ahead if you got it. That's fine.
No, go ahead.
No, one of the talking points about it too yesterday is apparently this embaco kid. I don't know if he was signed directly to like the Nike high school stuff, but he had committed to Duke very, very early on in his recruiting cycle. And so he didn't really have any prior relationships to any other schools. And so I was kind of wondering initially, how did Indiana even get involved with this kid? And it's probably because there weren't many coaches who had the chance to form a relationship with this guy before. And so he's kind of really starting over, even though it's so late in the 2023 recruiting cycle.
Yeah.
But this would be a massive, any get for Indiana, you could say would be massive at this point because you still have 3 scholarships to fill. But this would be, in terms of freshmen, when you're not looking at the transfer portal, this is the golden goose of what's remaining for the 2023 class.
Which would be a great get. And great gets are great no matter what. But you cannot build a team built on freshmen, I don't think, anymore in this era of college basketball and win at the end of the season.
I agree with you. I don't think having embaco means that you're building a team on freshmen because let's think about who the starters would be if you get embaco. You have
I agree. I agree with that. But I think that they need leadership. They need some veteran leadership as well.
Oh, of course.
That's another thing that comes with that. But I think that game experience, NCAA game experience, all those things are just very, very important if you can get it. So there's that.
Break.
When we come back, Alec Busse's going to join us. Kim Bulkey, the coach of LSU, she's not into social media, but she spoke to a packed Rotary Club at Baton Rouge luncheon earlier this week, and oh my God, she was dressed so silly. Anyway, I'll talk about what she said when we come back. But they landed Haley Van Lith, the Louisville transfer, one of the best players in all of college basketball. She's going to be with Angel Reese, one of the best players in college basketball. LSU is going to be extremely good next year. We've got to take a break. We're back with more Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Thanks a lot for joining us here on this Friday. Back with it right after this.
We'll be right back to the golf club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
If you're in the
All right, I'm gonna make sure Alec is good to come on right now because I know we've had some miscommunications the past couple weeks with him. So
well, he's an hour. He's an hour behind. He's an
hour
behind.
I know.
He's an hour behind. He's an hour behind right now, but in July he will be here.
All right, Alec's good. He'll be on in a few minutes.
Oh, what's Kim Mulkey? I don't care about what she said.
Kim Mulkey.
Yeah, they're loaded. Man. I wish we could kick K-Bro on, talk about not only could we talk about Richardson, we could talk about Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, that's true. Kevy and the Jets.
Oh, and all the Will Levis fans, thank you very much.
Imagine putting down the mortgage on him when it go ahead.
What was he? What pick did he go in the first round?
Crickets. Gotta love the crickets.
What did I say about him? I said no. They try to say Will Levis, and I said no.
I tell you what, I'm curious if he's going to end up being a steal, though, in terms of a pick. Like if he ends up, panning out to be something.
If he'll have to have the mental capacity to take this and turn it in to that. But
I think he seems like a pretty carefree dude. I don't think he gives a crap. I think he'll be fine.
But were there any other quarterbacks taken in the first round?
After Anthony Richardson?
Yep.
I don't know off the top. We can look at that, but all right, here we go.
Come taste with Dr. Hobbs' Brewing, Metalworks Brewing Company. Bring your passion and your thirst.
This segment is brought to you by Southern Stone Restaurant. Now back to the golf club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back. It is Friday. Thanks a lot for joining us here on this overcast and just one of those days. Last night was a soaker, baby. That's good. That's what you need in the spring, right? Get those greens flying into green, turning everything into looking like it's in Ireland. Flowers coming up. Need a little warmth. We could sure take some warmth. Alec Busse from thehoosier.com joins us now. Alec, how's it going, man?
It's going great, guys. My sister should be having a baby here within the next couple weeks. So,
oh wow! Congratulations, Uncle Alec. Can we start calling you Uncle Alec from now on? It's too late. You don't have to. I usually don't ask for permission. I ask for forgiveness. So, hi, Uncle Alec, joining us now. How's it going, brother?
Yeah, so it's exciting. Should be happening here in the next couple of days or weeks. Back home, close to St. Louis. in preparation for it happening. I don't really know how to be an uncle, so if anyone has any tips, send them into the show. Tweet them at me at Alec_Busse.
Oh, it's great. Being an uncle is great. You get to screw up and then hand the baby back and leave.
Sounds great. I'm kind of scared. It's going to be a baby girl, from what I understand.
That was going to be my next question. Speaking from experience, I'm a father of one, and it is an incredible daughter. Of course, every guy wants a son, and I'm thinking that, especially back then, that's when I was competing in rodeo. And so you're like, oh, that's in your mind. I wouldn't trade Kylie for anything in the world for 10 boys. But yeah, it's something. They're it's a completely different deal. Even though I did not raise a son, it's a completely different deal. But being an uncle or an aunt, or it's great. You get to do all the fun stuff, and like I said, and then hand it back and leave. You don't have to do the crying at night and the feeding, but you may have to. Maybe they can teach you how to change a diaper.
I'm gonna pass on that one.
Yeah, is that a hard no? No baby. That means no babysitting duties.
So it's funny you mentioned the babysitting duties. I'll tell a quick story, and then we can jump into the IU news. So over the summer, before I was living out in Kansas, I was having a conversation with my parents and then my sister and her husband, and my brother-in-law. He has two brothers and then a sister, and all of us are of age to like watch a child and be okay and be safe. So I asked my sister, I said, power rank the siblings of order in which we get to watch the baby if something happens. Like if you guys are sick or you guys got something come up and you need one of us to watch. And somehow I ended up second on the list. And I just feel like that's an awful ranking. Like I should definitely be third. Kyle's got a brother who is super old, who can definitely handle, like a baby being around. He's very well behaved. He would take direction very well. And then he has a sister who actually has a baby who's like a year or two old. And somehow I'm ahead of the one who has a child. And I don't understand it. So I guess my sister just really likes me or really trusts me. But I don't know if I'm qualified yet to, handle full responsibility here. I think I just call my sister every 5 minutes or my mom and she'd be like, all right, I need help. Like, what are we doing here?
Yeah. Just what's that movie? There's a couple of them. Any of the baby movies where it's a baby and a guy, you usually can watch that and learn everything what not to do.
Okay.
So there's that. And I know there's a lot of grandparents on here, a lot of parents. So anyone willing to offer him advice, do it on the Andy Moore Hound hotline, which you can do so for anybody that's following on YouTube. Hello to everyone listening on radio down on the river, our river rats listening on 97.7 ESPN, the Ref, always the right call in Evansville, in the Southwest Indiana area, up in the Northwest area in Hammond and Chicago, WJOB, 12:30 a.m., 104.7 FM. Soon be over on the Fan in Fort Wayne. That's 1380 FM and 107.5 FM and 89.9 WBRO and Marengo as well. And then, of course, if not in one of those areas, like most others, you can find us on YouTube easily at Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Alec Busse from thehoosier.com with us right now. There's not a lot going on, but there's a lot going on. Most of that is behind the scenes, Alec, which I think Indiana has finally gotten a little smarter in letting a little bit less information out. Although yesterday I do know that there was a recruit on campus. But once again, this is pretty much like Jalen Deloche, another 6'9" guy that can help with rebounding and whatnot. But when you have 3 open spots and you have a desperate need for a couple of shooters, potentially a backup guard, I'm shocked that they would. I shouldn't say shocked. You can always use one more big. I will say that 3 that are playing. If all 3 are playing, that's great. But it seems a little ironic that the next guy they're talking to is another 6'9" guy.
Yeah, obviously speaking about Miami, Florida transfer Anthony Walker, who took a visit to Indiana yesterday, was on campus yesterday. We were able to confirm at the Hoosier. I don't know if that visit is extending to today. I would imagine it is. He obviously played a ton for Indiana, but wasn't super productive in his 4 years there. His best season was his sophomore year.
For Miami, you mean?
Yeah. His best season
and ironically, he played against Indiana in the NCAA this past season.
So maybe he really caught Mike Woodson's eye in that game. I need to go look at his game log to see what he did against the Hoosiers in the round of 32. But in 37 games this past season for Miami, he averaged less than 3 points and less than 1.5 rebounds a game. His best year was as a sophomore. That was 2 years ago when he scored about 9.5, 10 points a game. And he started 16 games for that Miami team in the 2020-2021 season, I believe. And he's also not a shooter at all. Like, he has never proven to be a shooter on volume or anything. So I think this would be an ad for Indiana that would essentially be designed primarily for depth in the front court. I don't think it necessarily fills a major need in terms of what makes them better by adding him. I don't necessarily know. Like, he's going to be behind Malik Renew. He's going to be behind Peyton Sparks. He's going to be behind Khalil Ware in the front court. Now, he's a good athlete, good shot blocker, good length. All those things are nice tools to have, but he certainly doesn't fit the need that they have in the transfer portal with their 3 remaining scholarships of shooters and floor spacers and guys who can play in the backcourt. Because right now I still think that they only have 2 proven guards, and one of them is someone who averages less than 4 or 5 points a game in Trey Galloway. And that's not to take anything away from Trey Galloway. He fits a very important role for Indiana. But
absolutely. But he's a role, but that's the point. He's a role player.
Yes.
And that's exactly what he is. He is not a starter. And I know he's a great kid, and I know he's got a lot of fans. And I also am not meaning anything negative about Trey Galloway, but he's not a starter. And if he's starting for you, then you're not where you need to be talent-wise. More Anthony Walker, like Alec said, he played in a ton of games. One of the things he brings, he's 22 years old. He's a veteran. He's experienced. He's got NCAA tournament experience. He played in the Final Four. He played in 37 games. So he's got a lot of experience. He brings that. He brings Indiana is going to need leadership next year. And it really sucks for a program to have to import leadership. You have to grow leadership. That is a problem for a program when you have a team that does not have leadership from within. And this is going to be not a rudderless team, but you've got Xavier Johnson, but he's the lone guy. And, Xavier has definitely hit the guardrails, so to speak, on certain things. And I'm sure he's learned a lot of lessons, but you don't want just one guy. You want a couple, 2 or 3. And of course, college basketball is going away from that because the elite are freshmen and sophomores. You look at the draft we've talked about, the top 20 picks in the draft are looked at to be freshmen. And the sophomores are right behind him. You don't have a lot of great older players because if they were great, they would have been gone. But Indiana has to, Trey Galloway is going to have to step up as a leader maybe more so than as a player next year, or as much as a player. His leadership skills have to match a rise, and his play has to rise as well. But then we also have to look at C.J. Gunn, Caleb Banks. Indiana has to expect and count on improvement from those players, Alec.
Yeah, you talk about the leadership, and getting Xavier Johnson back is obviously massive for this team on the court and production-wise, and giving them a lead guard. And I think he gives them an identity offensively and what they're going to try and do. But I think off the court, in terms of intangibles, in terms of leadership, in terms of all of those things, like that might be his biggest value in returning to Indiana next season. Because like you mentioned, they lose so many guys. They lose 4 or 5 guys who I think carried a lot of weight in that locker room, in that program from a leadership perspective. Obviously, Trace Jackson-Davis is gone. Race Thompson is gone. Like, find me 2 players who meant more to a program than those 2 guys did for Indiana last season. It's hard to do. And I even think you can throw Miller Kopp into that conversation. I know he was only at Indiana for 2 years, but he really endeared himself to the fan base. IU fans love Miller Kopp, whether it's all the funny things on social media that he posts, his funny TikToks, interacting with fans on social media in various ways. I think Miller Kopp brought a leadership aspect that maybe wasn't always talked about. And then I even think Jalen Hood-Schifino had qualities of a good leader last year for Indiana, especially on the court. He never seemed to get overwhelmed by the moment. He never seemed to stress in high-pressure situations. And I think that's rare for a freshman guard, and I don't know if you can expect that from Gabe Cupps coming in next season. So I do think that the return of Xavier Johnson gives them a leader. Now, obviously, you mentioned some of the issues in the past with that, and obviously some off-the-court things that we don't need to dive into too much because it's not necessary. We know that history. But Xavier Johnson's older. He's going to have a lot of responsibility. I wrote yesterday on the website that I think he can potentially be this team's leading scorer next season because Trace Jackson-Davis is gone. We've seen him score in the past in his career. Johnson score upwards of 12 to 15 points at different times. He hasn't done that at Indiana, but he was also playing with an All-American. So I would expect Xavier Johnson to see his scoring numbers increase, to see his shot share increase. And it's about him finding ways to be efficient in that, which is something that we know he started to do at a higher level than he did when he was at Pitt his first 3 years of college. So now it comes into, can you carry that over to Indiana on higher volume with your shots? And I am excited to see what Xavier Johnson can do for Indiana because I think his return is very important.
And your point guard has to be your quarterback. And if you're the quarterback, you're a de facto leader on that team. Because all 4 guys that are on the court should always be looking towards you for the ball, for the play, for the offense, for the set, whatever. And if you're being looked at that much, you also have to be a leader, in my opinion. You have to be talkative. You don't have to be, demonstrative, but you have to be talkative. You have to be a communicator. You have to be a leader. A point guard has to be a leader on the floor, period. It'd be nice if you had more. Like I said, like last year, you have Trace Jackson-Davis. And at one point, they early on had Xavier Johnson. They ended up losing that, but you pointed out that Jalen Hood-Schifino settled in nicely. It took him a bit, but he settled into that role. And just his play a lot of times was good leadership by just keeping things calm. Indiana's going to have that. Unfortunately, they get that back with Xavier Johnson, but you also need a backup point guard. And you cannot have a drop that goes from 1 to 3 or 4. You can't have that much of a disparity. Of course, right now, a backup point guard is going to be a freshman. There's no leadership there. And you wonder what play would be like. Who's going to be the backup point guard for Indiana? I don't think Gabe Cupps he's more of a shooter. He's more of a 2, isn't he?
Yeah, he has the ability to play some point guard. I would describe him as a combo guard. I do think that Indiana will go find another point guard, but I could be wrong. Maybe Mike Woodson feels confident in Trey Galloway to be the backup point guard, considering he had to do it for so much last season.
I would not be surprised, but But if that's the case, again, I go back to: is Indiana good enough? If Trey Galloway is running the point, is Indiana good enough? Is that a good enough team
for what?
To be among the elite? Not as a starter, but I mean, if I still feel, I think your backup has to be better than that. I think your backup has to be as good as possible. He should be fighting your starting point guard for minutes. It's how I view it.
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't think that I look at this Indiana team and the roster that it currently is and the roster that it maybe projects to be as a team that is going to compete for a Big Ten title currently, unless guys really develop, unless guys really progress in their careers and reach their talent level, right? Like, there's a possibility that they're starting 2 former 5-stars with Khalil Ware and Malik Renew, right? And that's awesome. Like, talent acquisition is, in my opinion, a college coach's biggest job at football or basketball. Like, the number one job of a coach, in my opinion, is to recruit. Now, that being said, like, it's also recruiting kids who fit and kids who are going to elevate your program. And there's certainly a potential for both Malik Renew and Khalil Ware to do that. I just question, like, because we haven't seen them do it at a high level at the college level in the Pac-12 or in the Big Ten, that it's going to just happen magically for both of those players next season. I do expect them both to take a step next season, but I don't think I expect either one of them to be, you know, an all Big Ten first team selection next season based off of what they've shown. Is the talent there? Absolutely. That's undeniable, but it's hard to project that. So if Indiana is going to be one of the best teams in the Big Ten, they're going to need those 2 players to really take a step, and they're going to need Xavier Johnson to be the type of player that he was at the last month or so stretch of the 2022 season, when he was averaging like 16-ish points a game, was making over 40% of his threes, was dishing out over 6 assists a game. He was the biggest reason, in my opinion, that Indiana kind of went on that run at the end of the 2022 season, which led to them getting into the NCAA tournament after beating Illinois, beating Michigan in the Big Ten tournament. All of that happens before they lose in the round of 64. I think that there's potential for this team to be pretty good next season, to be someone who is playing in the NCAA tournament again. But in terms of being elite, like, I don't project this to be a top 15, top 10 team next season right now, the way it currently stands. But there's not very many teams in the Big Ten that I would project to be that right now. So I think they're in a pack of a lot of teams in the Big Ten who are kind of like right in the middle, right in the pack of fighting for an NCAA tournament bid, just kind of like a lot of teams were last year.
And a lot of talk about not Xavier, but Jalen Hutchefino trying to be helpful with whispering in recruits' ears down in Montverde Academy and whatnot. We'll see how that flies out. We've got more coming up. As I mentioned, the AAU weekend is going to be hot and heavy with tons of Indiana targets out in action. We'll talk about that and more when we come back here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio, brought to you by Hank's Pizza Mac. Don't forget, stop by and get either pizza, Mac bowls, tot bowls. I was by there yesterday and picked up some Mac bowls, and oh my gosh, delicious. I had the Southwest Mac, which I loved and saved for breakfast, and it was incredible. Tot bowls, pizza, all kinds of great things. And you'll probably see this guy around town if you could see my shirt that I'm wearing. Hoosier Hank, the Bison. More coming up here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Back with it right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. Whether
Excuse me. How you been, Alec?
It's been good. Busy.
Looking forward to moving to the Eastern time zone?
I can't wait for that. Actually, no. To be honest with you, John, no, I'm really not. I think Eastern time sucks. I think Eastern time is the worst time zone.
That's actually I don't know that I can fully agree because that's all I've ever known. But if you're going to Eastern from something else, I can see why you would think that because you're kind of the guinea pig for the day, if that makes sense. You know?
Central time, like I've lived in Central time my entire life, and I think Central time is the best time. But I think everyone who grows up in a certain time zone thinks their time zone's the best. But
I could see the arguments for why Eastern time sucks though, because like for example, if you're watching a national title game, it's super late. You start it super late, you end it super late.
John, we don't need to make it the national title game. We can make it any game. The draft would have started at 8:00 last night.
Yeah.
What time did it end there?
Anything that starts at 9 in Eastern, where it starts at 8 in Central, that's why you're all the perfect time zone. I can see that.
Yeah. Like, you know how Big Ten basketball or Big Ten football games will start at 8:00 Central time?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not prepared to have to stay up until 11:00 midnight to watch, like, Rutgers and Minnesota play. In fact, you know, I just won't do it, actually.
Just wait until the Pac-12 teams come in.
Okay, so I love the Pac-12. You can make fun of me if you'd like for that, because a lot of people do. But like the Pac-12 is probably like my second or third favorite conference to watch. I love it. It's so entertaining, and it's like there's nothing better than turning a game on at like 11:30 and not having a care in the world about what happens.
Yeah,
and not
I don't blame you.
And not getting angry about things that happen. And I find the Pac-12 to be so entertaining.
I think that's a really good reason to enjoy it.
I'm quite honestly very upset that I'm not probably going to stay up and watch those games anymore. Like, it's really going to make me sad. I'll be right back. Let me get a tissue. My allergies,
You're
man.
good.
They're kicking
that's how it is for me too. Not quite as bad as it can be, but they'll get bad
same
eventually.
here. But I'm back home close to St. Louis, and I have not had issues with my allergies for years. Did not have like to blow my nose once in Kansas, and now I moved back home for a couple days, couple weeks, and my allergies are kicking my ass. It's awful.
All right, here we go, guys. Alec, you're fine. You can come back in a second.
Avoid decision fatigue. You pick your plan and pick up at BB's Market with no extra charge. So leave the heavy lifting to us and enjoy healthy eating with stocked meals in your fridge. Order online today at thefreshfork.com. Fresh Fork is a proud partner of WOW Network. This segment is brought to you by RE/MAX Advanced Realty, Indie Home Pros team by Cheryl Sizemore. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Friday, April 28th. Jim Coyle with you as always, joined now by Alec Busse from thehoosier.com, Indiana Rivals, where you can get complete coverage of Indiana news, Indiana athletics news, recruiting information, all that's going on, which, although it's not a lot, is a lot right now in the background. In the break, I heard you talking about your allergies kicking up, Alec, that you've never had a problem when you're in Kansas. Well, that's because you can't breathe. No one breathes the same air twice in Kansas. Man, the wind blows through that place. And
it's bad right now.
But I think I told this story not too long ago. I never had allergies. And then a few years ago I started getting them, but I did not realize it. And for like a year or two each spring, I'm like just tore up. I'm like, what in the area? Finally someone said, well, you have allergies. I'm like, no, I don't. I didn't know you could just get allergies all of a sudden. I assumed that you either had them or you didn't. But I've learned different. So there's that.
Yeah, we all fight our own battles. Some do it better than others.
Yeah, well, unfortunately for you, here in South Central Indiana, that's another argument we had yesterday. It's very, the direction of the, who lives in what part of the state.
Yeah.
Indiana is a vertical state. And of course you've got North and South, but then you've got Southern Indiana, but you have Evansville, which is down in the Southeast. There's Lawrenceburg, which is over by Cincinnati in the Southeast. Louisville in Kentucky, where the area across from Louisville, which is the area where I'm from, which is what I call Southern Indiana. But people in Bloomington and across, I guess, all the way over to the east side consider this Southern Indiana as well. And I'm like, nah, we're a little too close to Bloomington still. I mean, to Indianapolis still for me for that, but that's a whole nother deal. What was I going to talk about? Oh, yes, this weekend. A lot going on with the AAU guys. Indiana seems, and that's another thing. I'm wondering, has Indiana shifted focus more toward 24 guys? We've seen a lot more offers going out. I don't know that was the plan originally, but now with these added holes, are they shifting gears? Because they have a good, I think they're going to haul a good class in. The recruiting has been fine for Indiana. They brought in top players. You can't complain. I mean, you got Jalen Hutchifino, you got Malik Renew. They're in heavily on Liam McNeely, maybe Asa Newell. And there's other guys out there that they're the Indiana guys. I think that they're in very well with Trent Sisley. I think that they're in very well with Jalen Harrelson. Flory Badunga is a complete outlier. No idea who, what, and where is in his. He's not an Indiana kid. He's from the Congo. He's only been playing basketball for 3 years, much less being in the United States and then having been in Indiana for a couple of years and has a host family. He doesn't have any allegiances, obviously, in college. I don't know if that family does. There's also the fact that he was brought over by the son of the coach of Indiana Elite, who is an assistant at Cincinnati. So as the dude would say in the Big Lebowski, yeah, man, there's a lot of ins and outs, a lot of facets to the story, man. So there's that. Are they looking, do you think they're looking more towards 24 than filling all three of these spots with portal players?
I don't think you'll ever stop recruiting. I think, like I said earlier, I think that recruiting is the number one job of college coaches. I think it's like 70 to 80% of a college coach's job is to recruit. So, no, I don't think that they're not focusing on the portal or not focusing on the class of 2024, the class of 2025. And we also know that it was reported yesterday that Indiana hosted or will be hosting former Duke commit and another 5-star, Mackenzie Embaco. He was signed to go to Duke, got out of his letter of intent shortly after Kyle Filipkowski announced his return to Duke for a sophomore year. So, and he's a good shooter. He would fill a need for Indiana should they land him. He was also going to visit Louisville, St. John's, Indiana, and I forget who the fourth one is. So there's are certainly still recruiting. I think that the way that Indiana is going about roster building right now is something that is to be determined, something that will be important to follow. But I think I say that about every program in the country right now because I'm very fascinated to see how college coaches do go about building a roster at this point. You did mention some of the targets that they've been going after. They started to extend some new scholarship offers this past week to a lot of players as well, talented players as well. So, no, I don't think that they're just disregarding the portal. I think a lot of their pieces that they're interested in the transfer portal might be declared for the NBA draft, and we just don't know who they are yet. Or further, maybe they just haven't entered the transfer portal yet. They have until May 11th, I believe it is, to enter the portal. So, Indiana, I think, is in a situation where they might leave a scholarship or two open next season instead of filling all 13, which is certainly a pattern that a lot of coaches have started to follow in the past couple of years for mid-year additions, or just because they don't feel like that they need 13 scholarships. And quite frankly, you really don't, because you're probably not going to play more than like 7 or 8, maybe 9 guys consistently anyway. So yeah, I'm intrigued to see what Indiana does here in terms of roster construction in the next couple months and even into the next couple of years, because I think it's an interesting case study for every program in the country.
Well, and the thing is, we were still seeing players enter the portal. And you are going to still see them enter the portal. Like you said, it's still open. Why that is? Different reasons. Maybe a team brings somebody in and it upsets a guy. That happens, whatever the reason. Personal things happen in their lives. Who knows? There will be more. Even there's a lot of people still in the portal, by the way, but there will be more that continue to enter, and Indiana is going to be fine. I really believe that they have the pieces to be a solid team. They need pieces to be a really good team, because we already know there are going to be some really good teams in the Big Ten next year. Michigan State, Purdue, Maryland, for certain. So you have to be ready. You have to be on that level. If you're not on that level, what are you doing? So that's what you have to be at the top of the Big Ten. And that has to be a goal year in, year out, which it is, I know, to win the Big Ten, but you've got to be there, and they're not there right now.
Yeah, they definitely have. They definitely do have a lot that they need to add. And again, like, I think it's just at a slower time in the transfer portal. We're seeing fewer and fewer people kind of go in it, especially high-profile players go into the transfer portal at this time of the year. And I think we're going to see another wave of players go into the transfer portal.
Here's the perfect example. Max Abmas just went in from Oral Roberts, but immediately Texas nabs him.
He was in the portal for a long time, though.
Oh, was he?
Yeah, he entered right after the season. He made that decision yesterday.
It really it makes you wonder why Indiana is not talking to or getting more visits from the type of guys that they're looking at. Whether they land him or not, getting these guys on campus the big problem? And if that is the case, why is that so problematic? Now, I know the AAU season stuff, but that has nothing to do with these guys. These guys are all in college now. Their weekends should be free. So I'm wondering why would they have it? Why would it be problematic getting guys on the campus?
Some transfers just don't take visits. For one, they don't feel like it's necessarily important for them to do it. They have an understanding of what it is they want, whatever school they pick. Other kids might not want to go on a visit because it just doesn't fit into their schedule as college kids. I know you said that like their weekend should be free, but they're still in school right now. A lot of them are. It's coming up on finals week. Some of them might be trying to graduate and be a grad transfer, so they're focused on school a lot. There's a lot of things that go into transfer recruitments. It's a lot different than recruiting high school kids. I just think it's kind of a different animal. There's a lot of kids who don't take visits at all. Like I'll use an example last year, like Terrence Shannon Jr., before he committed to Illinois, everyone kind of knows the picture that he has out there with Hunter Dickinson out in Ann Arbor. He took a visit to Michigan, but he didn't take a visit to Illinois before committing to Illinois. So, it's not necessarily something that a lot of kids do, is take visits to the schools that they want to transfer to. It's just a little bit of a different process for different kids. So I am interested to see like if Indiana gets kids that they maybe don't get on campus, or if Indiana follows a pattern of we want to get kids on campus, get a feel for them, get a feel for who they are. See if they fit the culture, see if they're not someone who's going to be complete knucklehead, whatever else it might be. And getting kids on campus allows you to do a lot of those things. So it's fascinating, I think you can say, to see how transfer recruitments go in comparison to how high school recruitments go.
And speaking of getting someone on campus, we talked about him earlier, but embaco, this is the type of guy that Indiana, that seems to be the guy that Indiana needs. And I think that he would probably be a good fit with that team, but they have to go out and they have to get him. Any idea who else is looking at him, where this is?
Yeah, like I said, he's also planning to take a visit to St. John's, which is obviously a little bit of a more attractive program now than it was in the past, with Rick Pitino leading that program.
The thing is, Rick is going to attack everything, and because he can, he's good, and you're right. Just because it's Rick Pitino, he can tell them, "Hey, do you want to get to the NBA? I can get. You want to get to the NBA? I can get you to the NBA." Which he's telling the truth. That's what he does. He is probably the best coach in college basketball today that's coaching.
I would counter you with Bill Self in Kansas, where he's also visiting.
Well, I don't know that Bill Self is a better coach. I'm not saying he's a bad coach. I think Pitino was just a better X and O's type of guy. I think Bill Self has had more talent over the years, and how that talent was acquired is greatly in question. So that adds another thing. Anytime we talk about a coach who I know, well, I shouldn't say no, who it is very, very, very suspect on how they acquired their talent, it just puts a mark in it for me. But embaco would be an incredible get for Indiana. That's the kind of guy that I think if they land, that would, boy, they could use one wing and a guy like that, and Indiana would be set.
Yeah, he would be a big ad for Indiana, and I would say that the competition for him is pretty tough. Kansas is in need of guys who play that position, good wing. So we'll see if Indiana is able to land him. St. John's is obviously tough competition. Rick Pitino, like you said, can sell getting guys to the NBA, can sell being one of the best coaches in the country. Bill Self can make that exact same sell. He can also sell playing in the Big 12, which has been the best league in college basketball for the last 2-3 years. Indiana obviously trying to get him as well. And then Louisville, another program that struggled a ton last season, only won 4 games. But it's Louisville. Have a good history. Recent history, as in like the last 5 to 6 years, has not been great. Obviously marred by a ton of NCAA violations going back to the end of the Pitino era at Louisville. They were heavily involved in the FBI stuff, just like Kansas was. So Louisville's had a lot of that stuff hanging over their head, which I think has kind of led to them struggling and making it hard for Louisville to find consistent footing in the basketball program. But they have a coach who is known for getting talent, and Kenny Payne, who was on Kentucky's staff for a long time, was their best recruiter at Kentucky for a long time. And this would be a massive commitment for Louisville if they were able to get Mackenzie Embaco as well. So it's certainly a recruitment that's going to be important to follow, because it's 3-4 really high profile schools that have had loads of success at points in the last 10-15 years. But then also it's a big time recruitment for each school, because he's a really talented player, and he might be the best NBA draft prospect from the 2023 class coming out of high school. It's not a very good class overall for freshmen. The NBA draft in 2024 is expected to be one of the worst since the 2012-ish era. That's year Anthony Bennett went number 1 overall. And Embaco is considered to be one of the better prospects of his class. So you kind of put all the things together, and he's an impact addition for whatever school ends up getting him after he gets out of his national letter of intent from Duke.
Alec Busse from thehoosier.com. Make sure you go there. And if you haven't signed up, sign up. Get a free account. Keep up with what's going on with IU news, recruiting, and everything else. Baseball this weekend, by the way, Indiana hosting Maryland in an important 3-game series as well. Alec, thanks a lot, brother. Have a great weekend. I think he may have lost us. You can't hear us now. But, Alec, if you can, have a great weekend. And we've got lots more coming up here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio. We'll be back with it right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
If you're in the is Osterman on today?
He should be. I'm making sure he's good right now.
And then, do we have anybody else after that?
Not planned since we don't have K-Bro.
Damn it. I hate when I have to think quickly like that. But
also, just take Zach until 10 or so, and then we can do 2 shorter segments.
Well, that won't be a problem. All I have to do is ask a question.
All right, yeah, they said he'll be on in a second.
Stop it. Holy moly. Holy moly. Holy moly. Well, it's a Bloody Mary morning, and she left me without warning sometime in the night. And I'm flying down to Houston with forgetting her the nature of my flight.
All right, 30 seconds. Zach should be on momentarily.
Southern Stone Restaurant on Patterson and Rogers. It's one of the most popular gathering spots in Bloomington. Whether you're out on a date with your spouse, friends, or coworkers, Feast Market and Cellar offers an extensive wine selection with a sommelier on staff to help you with your selections. Feast also provides a wide variety of cheeses, gourmet sandwiches, entrees, a coffee bar, bread, pastries, all made fresh and mouthwatering. Stop by Feast Market and Cellar today.
This segment is brought to you by Feast Market and Cellar. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio, coming to you here on this Friday. I hope you had a great weekend. If not, let's get you a good weekend started off. Jim Coyle here with the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios. Joined now by Zach Osterman from the Indy Star. Zach, how are you, sir?
I'm good. How about you?
Doing great. Getting caught up on Ted Lasso, man. And
yeah.
I realized that
I've been enjoying season 3.
I thought of you last night too, because what were they talking about? It was again something to do with the vernacular of soccer, and it was the friendly. They were playing the friendly, and he's like, "This is a damn exhibition." And then Beard, friendly. He goes, "Friendly? There's nothing friendly about this." And it just he goes, "Y'all soccer just confuses the hell out of me." And I'm like, that's me. I'm Champions League and the Premier League. I finally got that right, but
we have Mike DeCourcy on with us every Tuesday, and he's a huge soccer fan. He covers soccer a ton. And so he is very, very ingrained in it as well. Zach is a huge fan of pro soccer. Who's your team?
Liverpool.
I thought that's who it was. That's one of the teams I didn't see them playing against last night. They even on Ted Lasso, they have all the real teams, Manchester United and all that stuff, which is kind of cool. But I grew to not only respect but enjoy soccer, which is crazy because I when I graduated high school, we didn't have soccer in my school at Floyd Central, and we were not a small school. It didn't come until after that, and so no introduction, no understanding of it. As a matter of fact, when I was a TV sports anchor, it's very similar to hockey. And I was out in Washington State, and they had a hockey team, and I knew little about hockey. It was he shoots, he scores. It was about all you needed to know. But the point was, I took my daughter to a soccer game. I've told this story. It was Louisville against maybe the Indy 11. But unless you have gone to see a soccer game and you see it with your eyes, how hard that sport is. I put it up there with wrestling. If wrestling lasted that long, the drain on the body, it's incredible. And I know people, because there's not a lot of scoring, people don't get that. And then the World Cup, it's not as bad as it used to be. The flopping kind of ruined that for a lot of people. And I think I was one of those people that you'd see that. But anyway, going to that game, that changed everything. And then I was into it more than my daughter was, and she played all the way through on a successful high school team. And I would call her down and, hey, so-and-so's on. Are you watching this? She's like, what? No. It was like, what are you talking about? So that was that didn't go well. But man, it is a great sport if people that don't watch it would learn. You have to, first of all, you have to learn the damn rules. And I'm talking about the basic rules. Once you do that, it can be a very, very fun, entertaining thing to watch. How did you get into it?
I played it growing up. Just kind of fell into being a fan, fell in love with the, kind of the culture of it, the pageantry, all those kinds of things. Just really, really enjoyed it. And I don't know, just kind of, it was something where I think I made a concerted effort to try and follow it. 17 years old, just to kind of see what happened. And, it just kind of went all the way down the hill for me pretty fast. And I think I've come to enjoy it in particular because it's, when you cover sports in the States, you not that you don't enjoy them, but you get close enough to them that, you feel like you have to put professional barriers up around certain things at certain times. But with soccer, because we are so just geographically removed from it, it really does feel like something I can just kind of enjoy in an unrestrained way. I'll never cover it. I'll never cover anything around it. It's just, it's something that I could just kind of keep for myself, I guess. And that's why I enjoy it.
I played football, and I would never have traded that for anything, but I would have liked the opportunity to play soccer. Now I think I would have just enjoyed the challenge, because it is a unique challenge. And I remember talking to Todd Yeagley one day, and I asked him, I said, so what is it about soccer that is such a draw? And he goes, well, it's because you have to do everything with your feet. And he goes, you can't control the ball in any other way. And
to see some of the magic that goes on, and that's true. I mean, you see these bent kicks and how they run the offense and find guys. I'm like, how the hell he passes? And I'm like, how the hell did he see that? Because we're talking, everything is so, we're not talking a pass on a basketball court here. We're talking 4 times that length, and you have to see that ahead of time. It's some great stuff. And I know I'm going off on a tangent, but I think everyone should respect all sports and give it. If you haven't, you need to watch it. It can be, there's a reason the rest of the world enjoys the hell out of it. I don't know why that they didn't get into other sports as well, but there's that. I guess it was easier to not build gyms. What's going on with you, Zach? I know there's not a lot happening, although there's always stuff happening, especially with IU basketball recruiting. People are waiting, wondering what's going on. There's obviously the kid from Anthony Walker on campus for a visit now, but he's another big from Miami, but it'll still be a nice get, probably for Mike Woodson, adding a veteran, defined veteran who has tons of experience to his front court. But still needing the wing and the shooter to score or whatnot. But it's the portal is still open. There's still guys going into the portal. So I don't think that there's any reason for fans to panic.
Yeah, I think with Walker specifically, obviously you look at his profile and it is hard to, see a path to him being a major contributor. But I think one thing you do remind people is, listen, you got 3 scholarships open, and you need depth. You need experience. If I'm not mistaken, Walker only has 1 year. I was looking at his profile on the Miami website. He only has 1 year left. Right. So, that's not a scholarship you're pinning down long-term if you do wind up taking him. You need depth, and you need depth. I mean, listen, I forget who, I think it was Liverpool's manager talking about they had a real injury problem earlier in the season. He was talking about how bad, how below standard training sessions were, practice sessions were. He just said it's because we can't put enough players on the field to compete with each other. We have too many players that are injured. And, you forget that depth is important sometimes just for quality practice, for quality workouts. You can bring guys in that may not do much for you on game day, but may have real value to you behind the scenes. So, I know that people want bigger fish, and to your point, the portal is still open. Players have until May 11th to enter the portal. That's not counting graduate transfers. They are not beholden to that deadline. They can go in whenever they want. And the players that are in the portal, at least in theory, can come out whenever they want. But you have to be in by May 11th. And I think the next shoe to drop here is likely going to be the players that have been in the draft, that entered the draft knowing there was a good chance they weren't going to stay in the draft, but they wanted to go through the pre-draft process. And whether they knew it when they entered it, which I think a lot of them probably did, or they came to this conclusion, over time, those players eventually, of course, or excuse me, I shouldn't say of course, but those players will eventually plan on withdrawing from the draft, but entering the transfer portal. And I think that's where maybe you're going to see the next raft of big names that Indiana might target for some of these last spots. And then, of course, they've also set their visit with Mackenzie Embaco, the top 10 prospect who had been committed to Duke. So the point is, and I think we talked about this a little bit last week too, there are still plenty of irons in the fire. There are still plenty of, plenty of options for Indiana to pursue here. The margin for error is undeniably slimmer. It just hasn't been eliminated yet.
And I've talked at length about developing talent that they currently have. You've got Caleb Banks, CJ Gunn on the bench that are both very good players. That CJ, if you look at his numbers last year, his shooting from a shooting standpoint, they're abysmal, but he's not. He's a good shooter.
That's just time and experience, I think, because he shot 80% from the free throw line. Caleb Banks, that dude, I'm probably expecting more from him than anyone, just because it seemed like when he did play, man, he made the most of his minutes. He tried to grab rebounds, score, whatever it took. He was a very active but controlled in his play. So I think that he is someone that sees a great opportunity because his position is the one that is in need. And so there's no better opportunity than being not the incumbent, but you're in place already. And I think Indiana fans should look forward to a huge jump by Caleb Banks.
And I think you have to consider, and listen, this is the portal always kind of, I think, magnifies this and sort of almost like hypersensitizes every, I don't know if you want to say step or every just sort of piece of this, but I think there's also a player like Caleb Banks and what you're doing in the portal right now. That's part of the calculus a head coach has to sort of navigate in terms of, essentially, do I take a player that might get in the way of the progress of another player, or do I put my faith in a player who, like Caleb Banks, we saw some real moments of promise last season. You talk to anyone around him in high school, they think his ceiling is enormous, that he's just beginning to understand how good he can be, that he can shoot, he can handle the ball. We saw that in high school. We saw it in AAU. And so if you're Mike Woodson, you're in this spot where, on the one hand, if you recruit over a player like that or a player like CJ Gunn, they may enter the portal and you would understand why. On the other hand, there's always the risk of basically putting your chips in the middle on younger players and players that maybe still have a lot of polishing to do. I'm with you on Banks in particular. I think Caleb Banks can be very, very good. And I think that it's not hard to convince me of a world where Banks is a starter and a genuine contributor for Indiana next season. That doesn't mean they don't need to go get more help in the portal. That doesn't mean there aren't still pieces they need to add. But I think that is the other sort of piece of this roster equation, that because Indiana's roster has been so decimated, 7 players gone, through graduation, the draft, the portal, it sort of feels like there's a temptation to feel like there's nothing left there, when of course there obviously is. If you're Indiana, you just have to be, really sort of studious and diligent about developing what you have and filling in the holes where you don't.
Absolutely. And that's the only thing left for them to do is with those a few open spots. And like I said, we've talked about the portal. Not only is it open until May 11th. There you mentioned the guys that are not even in it that are going to be. And it may be, some of them may be better than any option that has been in there yet. Indiana seems confident in what they're doing. And, but if they don't land someone that is what we would consider special, where is this team right now, do you think?
No, I think first of all, it's not deep enough. Again, just going, it's literally in a situation where you would need every single player you have to be healthy to be able to scrimmage 5-on-5 with scholarship players alone. And of course, we've also seen a couple walk-ons go out the door. Walk-ons, again, I know that you don't see a ton of them on game day. They are also important, and having experienced walk-ons is typically part of having a productive roster. So there's a depth piece to it that they don't have that they need. There's obviously the 3-point shooting, I think is going to be a bit of a concern. even if they can add, one or two pieces in the portal, you're still maybe going to wonder whether they are going to be able to make shots at a high volume level, better basically than what they did last season. And if you don't add anybody, then that concern only becomes sort of magnified or exacerbated. And I also still think, and maybe they're targeting a player like Anthony Walker, thinking he can help with this. I still think there's also a need for some wing defense, if nothing else, just some athleticism and some length that you can throw at, players. And I know these are players that aren't in the Big Ten now, but they have been in the Big Ten recently. Players like Chris Murray or Johnny Davis or Ron Harper Jr. That has been a profile of player that has, frankly, had a lot of success in the Big Ten in the last few years that Indiana has really not had an answer for defending recently, and that's got to change as well. And again, maybe a player like Anthony Walker helps with that if they wind up, if he winds up committing to Indiana. But it's just kind of, there are still pieces of the puzzle, pronounced pieces of the puzzle that need to be put into place for me.
Absolutely, and hopefully they will get that lined up as the AAU season has already started. Zach, the kids are not even out of high school now. I thought that this usually it didn't start until at least they got out of school.
No,
and now they're already playing.
There'd always be at least one or two AAU games a year where kids wouldn't make it because of prom. So that was always the running joke.
Well, we've already had 1 week of play, and now this week, the EYBL tour is out in Phoenix. 3SSB from Adidas is down in Texas. Indiana Elite. Man, they've really loaded up their team, by the way. I had someone comment asking the other day, why is it still called Indiana Elite? Because it's got guys from Kentucky and Illinois on it, et cetera, et cetera. But that team with Brandon, with Jalen Harrelson, Trent Sisley, Flory Badunga, Raleigh Burgess, Travis Perry, guys like that, they'll be playing down in Texas, and that's a good core of, and that's a group of IU targets right there. I mean, half that team has offers from Indiana.
Yeah, no, and I don't know the Indiana Elite thing. I mean, Indiana Elite has had kids from Ohio in the past and has pulled kids from Louisville in the past. That's not wholly new. I mean, that's just
right.
That's just part of the rhythm of this thing. But it's also a reminder to your point that there will always be AAU programs close to home, and this is, I mean, irrespective of where the program is, who the coach is, whatever. This has always felt like one of Indiana's great strengths is that there will always be talent close to home that can, contribute to building a strong college basketball program. Indiana Elite is probably the most. Indiana Elite and Spice are maybe the two most recognizable pieces of that. Some other programs have kind of come and gone and risen and fallen. But there's always going to be guys around here for Indiana to be able to build with. It's just a matter of getting them in the door. Absolutely.
And there, some of the guys that they were not able to get on campus, I think that that was probably more they already knew that they weren't coming to Indiana. Maybe what was it? It was Leadland that didn't, or Necht that didn't make a visit, I think, right?
Yeah, Connect never visited, to my knowledge. Ledlam did, and I think it's fair to say, I think Indiana would have loved the chance to host Connect. I think it's fair to say they invested more time though in Ledlam's recruitment, and so that was probably the one that hurt a little worse. But those were definitely. I mean, listen, all this talk, all these things we're saying. None of this is to say Indiana hasn't had setbacks in the portal, because Indiana clearly has. None of this is to say Indiana doesn't have holes still to fill, because it clearly does. I just think that it's not time yet for mashing the panic button. Is basically all I would say.
I agree wholeheartedly. I think that they're just a piece or two away, and there's plenty of things out there that I think will probably fall into place, and they're going to have a decent class. And I think that the best recruiting classes are yet to come for Indiana, as they have kind of really been gearing up with hitting the recruitment, like people like Trent Sisley and Jalen Harrelson, you got Jalen Harrelson and Flory Badunga, who could be back-to-back, potentially number ones in their classes.
That's true. And I mean, with Badunga, with Harrelson, with Sisley, you could also be talking about Mr. Basketball winners. And, it's not always the most important thing in the world, but it's obviously been a couple of years since Indiana signed one of those. And so, that's always that is always something that is going to mean something to IU fans as well. But as ever, it's the question is just, can you get the right pieces, and then can you do the right things with them? It has it's great beating other schools for players. It's great getting guys with good star ratings, or guys that are if for lack of a better term, homegrown, from your own backyard. But you can do all that really well and still fail if you're not developing those guys well and putting them in the right places, essentially.
Absolutely. How was Little Five?
That was good. We finished fifth. We rode a really strong race.
Top 5 finish. That's good, man. Top 5 finish. That's tough to get done.
Yeah, we'd love to get to a place where we're knocking it out a little bit more, but it was a tough race. It was a shallow field, which meant it was a lot more of a not to get too technical, but there was just a lot more attacking. The race got a lot more stretched out, and we had to really kind of push ourselves to the ragged edge to stay there. And so was really proud of how the boys rode on the day.
I was talking, I think it was yesterday. I'm like, if you haven't seen the race, you need to see it. It is very cool. I mean, you've got, it's just think about the Indianapolis 500, except for having 4 drivers and having to make driver changes on the fly in the pits with kind of the car rolling. Imagine them just opening up the car door, a guy jumping out, another guy jumping in and taking off. There are wrecks. There are caution flags. And especially you get down to the end. This year's finish was a photo finish. Cutters winning their 15th title. There are wrecks, like I said, and it's just it is another great crowd. Looked like the capacity crowd out there as well. So it looked like it was a fun day.
Yeah, and the weather wasn't too bad. Obviously, the rain kind of delayed the women's race, but I think delaying it was a good call because it did just kind of let everything clear up. And then the men's race, of course, was cooler, but stayed dry, and so and made it, kept conditions a little bit safer in that. And all in all, a really good weekend, and I think, maybe for the first time since COVID, a feeling like we had kind of the old race back. And that's not a knock on the race directors that Andrea Balzano and Hank Duncan that had to navigate all the stuff around COVID. But, 2020, there was no race in 2021. There were no fans. 22 certainly felt like we were getting there, but it, didn't have a totally stocked field on both sides. And there was still maybe just some, I don't know, for lack of a term, maybe social behaviors, people feeling comfortable coming out and being in crowds and all that kind of stuff. It still just felt a little bit that this one felt like kind of the first one since we kind of restarted everything, that just felt, very normal and kind of untouched by what's happened the last 3 years. So it was nice.
Zach Osterman from Indy Star. Thanks, brother. I hope you have a great weekend.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, as always.
You betcha, sir. Zach Osterman from Indy Star joining us here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio. More coming up, brought to you by Metalworks Brewing Company, located right off the square on 6th Street in Bloomington, or you can find it at any of the Endeavor Hospitality restaurants. We're back with more Indiana Sports Beat Radio right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
So I owe you a break, don't I?
Yeah, we'll just do 2 short ones here. 2 about 10, 15-minute-ish segments.
Yeah. Man, I'm so behind on the damn comments. Mark, I don't think anyone's talking about 2 and 3 transfer, 2 or 3 year transfer guys. That's the great thing about the portal. You can pick up 1 year guys. As Zach just said, how's he got to be a cheater? And how the hell can you cheat today?
I think they just mean in general because he was on the Calipari staff for a long time.
But you don't have to. This is what happens. Right there. And that's coming. I'll have to bring this up because that is coming to me from someone that is close enough to the situation that I know that to be true. That's one of the reasons Indiana is losing, too. People may not want to believe. People don't want to believe that. People don't want to hear like people that are outside of that are not an IU fan. If you say something like, "Well, Bob Knight never cheated," they're like, "Oh, bull." Well, I'm not a Bob Knight fan or a Bob Knight antagonist. Respect him. But I will tell you from a reporting standpoint, and I'll say I should just save this for on the air, but he wasn't a cheater. He hated it. That's why he hated John Wooden. But this is what's getting a lot of guys. But it doesn't. People promising this, but not delivering. But going to Louisville is not like someplace like Louisville for him. It doesn't make sense. They're not going to be good fast.
All right, here we go, guys.
Provide their guests with an exception.
I say guys like somebody else is here, but
yes,
you know what I mean.
There you go.
Provides delicious 5-star comfort food with a Southern charm at 2-star prices. Southern Stone Restaurant is part of Endeavor Hospitality's Wow Club.
This segment is brought to you by Courtroom Sports Grill in Bedford. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Friday. It's April 28th. I hope you're ready for the weekend because it's here, whether you are or not. Appreciate you being with us here. Brought to you by Courtroom Sports Grill down in Bedford. Cajun cuisine, great place to meet friends for lunch, take the family for dinner, go watch a game. The food's incredible, made fresh from scratch daily. That's good stuff there. Talking about recruiting right now again. I'm trying to find some of these comments that I've seen and tried to mark here on the Andy Moore Honda hotline. You can do so as well if you're following along on YouTube. You can still listen to us on the great radio stations that you're listening on as well. No, that was a discussion about North-South. I'm skipping that for right now. Where is the first one I had? Mark, daggone it. There we go. All right. Mark says, if IU portals all these kids, who's going to leave to make room for the 24 class that they are so strongly trying to sign? Well, most of these guys are 1-year transfers. I'm not saying all, but most will be that. I'm not talking about where. I think Patterson has 2 years left, but that's great because you don't have front court guys coming in. So these others, you're looking for short timers. You just need some short timers. And that should usually make it a little easier because you got guys that are like, okay, I know I'm only going there for a year. So they don't have to worry about committing more than that. But yeah, it's you have to leave room for the 24 class, but they're obviously going to do that. But that's easy by just signing these 1-year guys. But you're also probably going to have somebody leave off of your team next year. It happens. Remember that. Andrew said, promise Embaco a ton of playing time and NIL money. Well, the reason I put that up there, Indiana does not do that. And I'm not saying that from a standpoint of because I think Indiana is, whatever. No, I'm not. If you listen to me, you know that I say what I think or what I know. And this happens to be something that I know that is come in a conversation with someone that is close enough to the situation that I know this to be true. There are a lot of programs that are offering players things without it being basically without it being necessarily true. Hey, you're going to have X amount of playing time and you're going to be able to get this amount of money. First off, coaches are not allowed to talk money, really. They can give general parameters. This is what we think you should be able to make. But they don't know. What they do know is what they can get from their own collective. What they can get from Hoosiers for Good, which is the major check writer. But there are many, many other opportunities. Just saw yesterday that Malik Renew has signed a deal with Big Woods. For those of you that are in our area, Big Woods started in over in Nashville, Indiana, Brown County, and have branched out with all kinds of things. There's many other opportunities. Trace Jackson Davis, the guys with the banks, you see the ladies. There are many opportunities, especially if you're a basketball player in Indiana. But the point of my story is they don't know how much that they can make. And you can't tell them a number. Now, do some coaches do that? Maybe. I don't. I'm not in those meetings. Probably. Seems like it. Sounds like it's what I was told. And promising starting roles or X number of minutes. I'm told that that's not done, but I wouldn't do that either. I want a guy that's coming in that's going to fight, period. I don't care who and how he is. I want him to fight for his minutes. No one should come in feeling entitled. You're the new guy on the block. Now, you may be the better guy, but you still got to win that spot. Khalil's, you still need to beat out. Well, that's going to be odd. Who's he beating out? Sparks? That's good, though. You need battles. Iron sharpens iron. Plastic does not sharpen iron. You have to have equal competition to raise the level.
So we've got to take a break. Our last one. Let's take that, come back and finish it up and get you started for your weekend. Indiana Sports Beat Radio back with more right after this.
We'll be right back to the golf club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
If you're in the
All right.
Oh, I just made up a song. How'd that sound?
Sounded great.
See, Robbie said, well, he wasn't talking about that, but my man,
30 seconds.
My peeps. By Endeavor Hospitality Group, launched from a previous staple in Bloomington, the former Function Brewing, Metalworks Brewing Company is the culmination of a passion for beer, food, and custom metal art. Check out their custom growlers. Metalworks Brewing Company has an updated menu, new brews, and will be offered in all Endeavor Hospitality restaurants. Come taste with Dr. Hobbs' Brewing. Metalworks Brewing Company. Bring your passion and your thirst.
This segment is brought to you by K-Bello. Now back to the golf club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back. Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Jim Coyle with you here on this Friday. It's April 28th. A little good day to get some stuff done inside. A little chilly. And little it's cloudy, yucky out there. And I think I mentioned, Chili from my IU basketball team. Why am I drawing a blank on his name? Gosh darn it. He signed with Indiana Wesleyan. I'll get his name in a second. Somebody will pop it up for me. Nate Childress came into my head. Thank you. How about, let's see. Oh, there was, the NCAA has denied a couple of requests. One was the United Athletic Conference wanted to become a single sport FCS football conference.
Denied by the NCAA. Why? If they that conference is made up of soon to be 10 football programs from the WAC and the ASUN, which have joined together for football scheduling a single automatic FCS playoff spot for the past 2 years. The NCAA has had a moratorium on single sport conferences since early 2020. That moratorium is set to expire June 1st unless the board of directors votes to continue it. The UAC plans to continue moving forward the conference name and vision, even if it's not an official conference. Well, that's stupid. Why would you deny something that's going to expire in 2 months? I can't even say that word anymore without hearing that damn commercial in my head. Expired, expired, expired. Having ants. But that's Abilene Christian, Austin P, Central Arkansas, Eastern Kentucky, North Alabama. That's not Kane Wabick. He's South Alabama. Southern Utah, Stephen F. Austin, Tarleton State, Utah Tech, Texas, Rio Grande Valley will also begin in 2025. So there's that. The other waiver that was denied, James Madison. You know how Bellarmine and other schools before, this is another rule that makes just no sense. When you move up from Division, well, there is no Division II, from Division I F, BC or whatever, up to Division I, there's a 2-year waiting period before you're eligible for bowls, playoffs, NCAA, et cetera, et cetera. James Madison denied or applied for a waiver, denied by the NCAA. But this moratorium is also set to expire, I think. No, I'm talking about the same one. I'm pulling this on here. James Madison wanted to shorten their FBS transition requirement. So they're going into FBS. And regardless, the NCAA denied this. It's stupid. If you're moving up and are able to qualify, to win enough games, to do whatever it takes to qualify, why in the hell would you not? The NCAA's reason is because they want to make sure programs have time to put all the things in place to be able to be competitive. If you're already competitive, then what the hell? Why would you have a rule that's a what if? That's a what if rule. Guess what? If they don't have things in place well enough to be competitive, they're probably not going to win. And they're not going to win enough to qualify for bowls or NCAA tournaments or whatever. That's a self-governing issue. But the NCAA, their great wisdom, needs to put their finger in a dike that doesn't need it. Both of these waivers, stupid. So the NCAA continuing to do dumb things, which is good. We wouldn't want them to change completely, right? Craziness. Let's see. Hubers. For those of you that live down and around the southern Indiana area, or if you want to drive, I mean, it's not that far from a lot of places. Huber's located in Starlight, Indiana, in North Clark County, which is down close to Louisville. I mean, you think about all the places within an hour, but you better get your tickets. And I do not have the official information of that. I will tell you, it will sell out. It always sells out. And it will probably sell out potentially before I'm able to even put a link out there. I'm just trying to give you a heads up that it's coming. May 31st is the date. Hoosiers for Good will have some IU athletes down there. Of course, expect Mike Woodson, Tom Allen. Not sure who all will be there. I assume maybe Terry Morin, potentially Jeff Mercer. Not sure with baseball because they're playing and having a hell of a season, by the way. Ran into, did I mention this yesterday? I think I did. Connor Foley's dad. And was able to clear it up. He does not live in a van down by the river. He lives in a van behind the dugout. And that's so he can pitch every day. And he's doing a hell of a job. He's just a freshman, man. Hitting 95. Click, click. On the old gun. Indiana has a ton of young talent. I talked about this last year that Indiana was looking to I didn't know they were going to be this good. I don't know that Jeff Mercer knew they were going to be this good this quickly. But they're being led by freshmen. Now, the only thing that worries you there, into the season, things get heated, especially go with this weekend. I also saw Maryland get off the team bus yesterday as they arrived into Bloomington, going into their hotel. Indiana has a 3-game series with the Terrapins that will most likely decide the Big Ten championship, as Indiana with about a 1-game lead on Maryland right now, I believe. I have to pull those standings up, but those are the teams at the top. And this is most likely going to do that. Indiana only has 2 other series after this, I believe. But this is a very, very important one. Indiana has not lost a home series at home. They have won 8 straight games. They're 22-1 at home. If they can maintain that, if they can go 2-1 over the weekend, they gain another game on Maryland. And that's an important lead. Important for Indiana because if they win the Big Ten, they're likely going to host a regional. And that is a big deal in baseball, especially for a team as far north as Indiana. It doesn't happen that often. Indiana has had one. That would be some good research. Who's got the furthest most northern host site? Man, next week. What's next week, John?
It's Derby week.
It is Derby week. I know everyone on here may not be a horse racing fan, but it's not just about horse racing. It's about, there are so many storylines. There is the racing. There is the Derby. There is the horses, the trainers, the atmosphere, but the characters, the celebrities. And this year we'll be there. I'm planning probably Thursday and Friday from the track, but during the day on Derby Day or maybe Oaks Day, I'm going to try to get some other interviews that we can use for Monday. And hopefully we can make that happen. John, are you going to be out there?
I actually don't know yet. There's a chance I could be, but I do not know yet.
That's dumb. That should be a no doubter.
It's one of those things where I'll probably find out this coming weekend, and I'll know on Monday morning.
Is it one of the stations they're doing?
No, will like iHeart as like the stations I work with, they'll be out there. I don't know if I personally will be out there.
Well, cool. Well, hopefully you are. That would be amazing. So, but we're going to be out there, and we're going to be just bringing you some different stuff. But we're still going to have all the other sports content. Don't worry. We're just adding it to it. Man, a great week, an absolutely fun week. That was a blast. Big thanks today to Alec Busse for joining us from thehoosier.com. Make sure you give him a follow and go to thehoosier.com and keep caught up on everything going on. Alec, Zach Osterman from the Indy Star as well. Of course, thanks to Zach for joining us each and every week. And if you're going to Twitter, if you have Twitter, please go there and give me a follow. I would really appreciate it. At Jim Coyle, ISB. And if you follow along or go back and catch some episodes or some segments on YouTube, make sure you subscribe and hit that notifications toggle and the like button. It's very, very helpful to us. We're grateful for you. I hope you guys have had a great week. More importantly, I hope you're ready to have a great weekend, and I hope you do just that. For John, the producer, I'm Jim Coyle. Until Monday, I will see you on the radio.
Thanks for listening to Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube page for more clips and team coverage of Indiana basketball, football, and more. You can also find full episodes and tons of other content on thehoosier.com. We'll see you next time for another edition of Indiana Sports Beat Radio.